Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold. This show is actually a little bit different. I'm calling it Cottage Talk Post-Match Reaction. Instead of a full-on post-match show, we'll be talking about the match, but I've got some really interesting information that I'll be sharing during the show. We'll call it speculation, but I learned a great deal earlier today, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you and let you make your judgment on what I'm going to share and what Tony and I are going to be discussing. I think you'll find it interesting. But we'll also talk about the match. And before we go on any further, I just want to welcome Tony back to the show. Tony, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, and I can tell you, after probably, 2 months, we are now back live on X, on my Russ_Goldman X account. I don't know what happened, but we're live again. So I hope people do join us live. We're live on the Cottage Talk YouTube channel and live on Facebook. But I know that I get a lot of people to watch us live on X. So thank you, everyone that watches live wherever you are. And we're going to have a very interesting discussion. So let's get to it, Tony. Again, let's just get to opening thoughts on what we watched on Saturday. I got to be honest with you. I've been watching Fulham for many years. This goes basically up there with one of the most disappointing losses that I can remember. I mean, there are a ton, but if I'm going to the Premier League, this is up there in performances, especially that first half. Very disappointing. You have to give Everton a lot of credit. Let's start there. Let's get that out of the way. I want to give Everton a lot of credit. David Moyes, his players, they set up themselves well to really hurt Fulham. But Fulham did a lot to hurt themselves, Tony. That first half was horrific. And the reason why I'm calling this Cottage Talk post-match reaction, save Silva fails miserably for Fulham against Everton, is I truly believe that Fulham were not set up to win that match. They were set up to play it safe and maybe nick a point, maybe nick a victory. Very disappointing decisions by the Fulham manager. That's where I'm going. Those are my opening thoughts. How about you, my friend?
Yeah, obviously, hugely disappointing result, given the 3 points that we picked up against Wolves. But, I wasn't the one that was getting carried away thinking, oh, well, we've beaten Wolves now, and now we're going to go on this unbelievable run. Because the bottom line is that Wolves are, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst side in the Premier League at the moment. And I was always going to say that if we can go to Everton and show the same commitment, desire, attitude, work ethic, that we'll get something out of the game. But of course, Marco Silva, as we said, would revert to type, and he did. And, the harsh reality now, Russ, is that if Marco Silva doesn't find a way to change this formation and find a way to get our more attacking, better technical players in this side moving forward, then, at the moment, I'm looking at the Premier League, and other than Wolves, I don't see at the moment that there are three worse teams than us at the moment. And that's where I'm looking at. And that's a really difficult position to be in, because, like I said, Forest and West Ham will definitely start to get on a run and pick up points. And we've got to play them both soon as well. So yeah, it's not looking great, and obviously we're going to go into a lot of detail as to why Saturday wasn't great. But Everton are a good side; they've got some very good players. We have got some good players, but those good players are not being played, or they're not being played often enough. And leaving Josh King out was just mind-blowingly, dumbfounding, really, and it's just no reason for it. So, look, he's under pressure for the first time in his tenure. He's had this prolonged period of difficulties, and we haven't got any easy games coming up. So he's under pressure. He's under a lot of pressure.
He is, Tony. And what's interesting about this is that I think you just laid it out for us. I think it's the first time in a very long time I can remember that he's been under any pressure. There have been times where maybe he's been questioned, but not like this. This is serious pressure. And like I said, while we do this show, I'm going to be sharing some interesting information that I've learned, and I'll share it with the audience, and you make your own judgment, because I'm telling you, what I've learned is interesting stuff where it comes to Marco's contract. Some of Marco's decisions can be affected by what we're going to talk about. I think I'll leave it to the audience to make your own judgment. I'm just telling you what I learned today. Some very interesting stuff, but just talking about the match today, I'm glad that you got us started by really just talking about it in general terms before we talk about other things. Is that I knew before the match began, I messaged you when I saw the starting 11. I could have predicted this was going to happen. Honestly, I could have predicted it because I knew how we were set up. I knew what to expect from Everton. I knew what to expect from us without playing Josh King. Let's just start there, because again, let's go right to Cottage Talk talking points. This is the first topic. Save Silva failed miserably for Fulham against Everton. That's the title of the show. Why do you think he made that decision?
I think, look, my opinion on it is we're away from home. He wants to go there and be, solid in midfield, out of possession of the ball. And obviously the way that Josh King plays, because he plays with no fear, he likes to run in behind. He gets into very good areas offensively. And maybe for this particular game, he felt that his defensive duties wouldn't necessarily be up to the level that he particularly wanted. And he was, as you say, Safe Silva wanted a bit more defensive, maturity in those areas. That's the only thing, Russ, that I can put it down to. But the problem with that is, by taking Josh King out, what you're doing is you are taking out who effectively has been Fulham's most influential attacking player. So you've gone back to type with Berger and Lukic, who offer you absolutely nothing going forward at all. And so, it's sort of like, you're taking from Peter to pay Paul, but actually it backfired massively. And, there was this argument, so, well, things may have been different had Josh King started. They could have been. We'll never know. But the bottom line is that, as I said, Marco Silva now has to find a way to get away from this Berger-Lukic combination that he's so obsessed with, because it's not working. It's not doing us any favours. And we can't go into the next, Dylan's touched on it there, our next 4 games. He cannot go into those games playing that way, because we will get dealt. We will get dealt badly.
Right. And listen, if he continues to play to type now, obviously Lukic is out, so he can't do it. He can't do it for the next match. Thankfully, he can't do it for the next match. But I was having a conversation with a Fulham supporter that basically brought this up to me, going back to talking about King and why couldn't you have done this? Now, he plays Iwobi as the 10, right? You could have played actually King as the 8. He's played it. Apparently people can fact check this. I don't know, because I don't watch enough of youth with the England setup, but he's played the 8 for England, apparently, reportedly, right? Why couldn't he do that for Fulham and still have Iwobi as the 10, or switch them? Why couldn't you have done that?
Look, why didn't he just go with a team that won the week before and just stick with a team?
Exactly.
But he's got a point to prove. And look, I can understand it in principle because of the opposition away from home, wants to be a little bit more solid defensively. But the fact of the matter is we haven't looked any more solid defensively playing those 2 in front of our back 4 at any time this season or last. We are still conceding goals. We're still getting opened up in areas. We still look a shambolic, defensive mess at times, which we did again on Saturday. And actually, I think it's time to start questioning Bassey and Anderson as our centre halves. I think they need to be scrutinised a little bit more, because
totally
I
agree.
Really don't think that those 2 are defending particularly well at the moment. I really don't.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's going to come up in our conversation shortly, because like I said, I learned a lot of interesting information, but I don't think any players should have this right that it's their position, including Leno. If Leno has a couple stinkers, you should consider a backup. There should be no player that it's your position. You have to not only play well and continue to earn that position, in my opinion, okay? You brought up a good point. If these two guys are not getting the job done, and I've seen Bassi have some stinkers lately, you have Cuenca ready to go. Diop has not done anything to hurt you. Now, again, going forward, maybe they don't offer you as much. They don't offer you those passes that you get from Anderson. Maybe defensively, they offer you more. And I'll make the counter argument with everything that you're saying about the situation defensively. Well, sometimes going forward, pushing forward can mask what's going on defensively a little bit, meaning that if you have Josh King and you're pushing the ball forward, maybe that masks up some of the issues that you're having defensively. So it's not working with two holding midfielders. Why not say, well, screw that. I'm playing with one holding midfielder, and we're going to try to take it to the team to lessen what is going behind us, because that ain't working, Tony, because they're not creating anything. So it's only a matter of time before teams put us under pressure. So why don't we try to put teams under pressure by going forward?
Yeah, very, very good points. And I think really, Russ, Saturday was more a case of thinking too much about Marco Silva, thinking too much about stopping Everton.
Right.
And stopping, what
which
they
I understand.
do.
I do understand.
Rather than thinking about, what we do and what we do best. And the bottom line is that we've got some very good attacking players that can hurt teams given the opportunity. If you set us up correctly and you get the balls in the right areas, then we can hurt teams. But we didn't show that initiative. We didn't show that on Saturday at any point. And it was a really flat, pathetic, awful performance, which at the end of the day is on Marco Silva to a degree because he picked the side. But also the players have to look at themselves as well, Russ.
Of course. It's not just Marco Silva.
No, it's not. And I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking that maybe there is some, strong personalities in that Fulham dressing room who are, getting the shirt not necessarily because they deserve it.
Yeah.
And it's starting to show a little bit, because let me tell you, Cuenca put in a fantastic performance against Arsenal, right? Regardless of what anybody says, he's technically our best defender, and we haven't seen him since. And that to me makes absolutely no sense. With Wolves, okay, you can put aside, but we're a team that's conceding goals. Bassi and Anderson have been a big part of that centrally. So is there an argument to say, actually, let's change those two centre halves and let's put Diop and Cuenca in there and let's see what happens?
Exactly. That's my point. My point is no player should it's automatically theirs. If you're having bad performances with any team I follow, they might get sat. And again, it could be a wake-up call, or it could give someone else an opportunity. If we're as deep as some think we are, deep at each position, I believe Marco has talked about, well, not deep, but we have someone else available at every position. Give them a chance. Give them a chance. If it ain't working, you got to fix it. But the thing is, like I said, and we'll talk about it in one of my talking points, I think that there's something going on behind the scenes with possible factions breaking up between the club. Similar, sounds like to me, based on what I heard today, could be a little similar to what happened under Scott Parker. Okay, and that's shocking to say, but I've heard some interesting things today, and I'm going to share that coming up. But beyond that, Tony, when I look at what's going on, you've talked about the defensive frailties so much, and you were right about that. But what also goes hand in hand, we're not creating anything. So I think that's hurt. I think we're hurting twofold. And the thing is, I agree with you. I also like a manager that tries to stop the other club from playing. I can respect that. Try to take away their strengths. But at some point, it's taking away your strengths because you're taking Josh King off the pitch. And I'll ask you this question before we move on. Were Fulham better when Josh King came on? Were they hurt defensively when Josh King came on? I don't think they were, Tony, and that was the beginning of the second half.
Like I said, you've taken out your most attacking, bright, brave player that's been a breath of fresh air all season, and you've decided to not play him because you're too worried about losing a football match. And you see, this is where Fulham are going to come unstuck this season if the mindset doesn't change.
Right.
Marco Silva has to get us on the front foot and get us playing front foot football. And, look, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, Russell, but the thing that disappoints me the most is the current treatment of Emil Smith Rowe at the moment.
It's horrible. I'm glad. Let's talk about this.
Absolutely abysmally, right? Because I'm telling you, there's a footballer there. I'm telling you, there's a very good, technical, good quality footballer there. And he's having the piss taken out of him a little bit. And
5 minutes, Tony. 5 minutes.
Yeah,
he gets 5 minutes plus stoppage time. What is up with that?
There's something going on, Russ, that we don't know. And I believe that he could be a game changer for us, but he needs games. He needs to play, and he needs to get into a system where we can, bring out the best in him. And at the moment, that's not happening. And it's not happening with quite a few of our players. So, right. Look, I think that there's a lot to be said. Hi, Emma. There's a lot to be said about that. But as I said, ultimately, moving forward now, Marco Silva has got some big decisions to make. And, the other player that seems to have fallen off a cliff that we don't see anything of anymore is Harrison Reed. Now, don't tell me that Harrison Reed still does not have a role to play in this team, because I still believe he does. I still believe he has qualities that, Berger and Lukic actually don't have. So I just think that certain players have been cast aside for whatever reason, and that's actually hurting us. And something needs to change to bring the group together. It looks like to me there's a bit of a disconnect. And if that isn't rectified and changed, then, the next 4 games, it's going to be heavy watching. And I think Gary made the point before, or was it Stuart, that, Everton also had 3 goals disallowed, chalked off on Saturday, Russ. So the score could have been a lot worse. I mean, they opened us up like a can of worms. Every single time they went forward, they looked like they were going to score. And that just isn't good enough.
No, definitely not, Tony. Definitely not. Listen, be honest with you. And I would just message something just now that, again, a lot of talk going on behind the scenes. And not sure, like I said, I'm not sure what exactly is going on. I have a feeling something's going to happen during this international break. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling something might happen. So that's going to lead to talk about what I learned this morning. And I had a very good conversation with someone who actually shared some interesting things with me from some sources. So let's get to what I learned, okay? And again, you can take for what it's worth. Again, you call it speculation, whatever you want, okay? This is what I heard today. So this is what I heard. Marco's contract discussions heat up. And what I heard was that there was a conference call on Thursday between Marco Silva, Alistair McIntosh, and Shahid Khan on the conference call. No George Mendes, just them on the conference call. What I was told was Marco put forth he wanted a 5-year deal with a release clause. Shahid Khan said doesn't want a release clause. He countered with a 3-year deal with no release clause. Okay, Tony? So this happened last week before this match. So I want to just start by talking about, again, this is what I was told. Take it for what it's worth. Speculation, but this is what I told from a pretty reliable source. I'll just leave it at that. So nothing else has come from it as of yet. Again, I just message something, but we'll see what happens. I'm not going to mention that. I just want to talk about what I learned. What do you make of this, Tony?
Yeah, it's obviously very interesting, but we all know that contracts pretty much aren't worth the paper they're written on, Russ. Everyone would have seen and heard what's happened at Middlesbrough with Rob Edwards in the last few days. Gone in there, done very well, apparently, signs a brand new 3-year contract. Wolves come knocking, and then he's put on gardening leave, and then, the whole thing is just up in the air. So, release clause, no release clause, 5-year contract, 3-year contract. The bottom line is, Russell, is, as you say, it's all hearsay. What I want to see is Marco Silva dedicated and committed to this football club. If he is, then sign a 2-year contract. Tony Khan, get your hand out your pocket and give him the funds to bring in the players that he needs to turn this team from a mediocre to okay side to a good to great side that can then, get us up the table and then competing for European football. Or if you're not going to give him the contract and Marco Silva's heart isn't in it, because what that will tell you, Russ, is previous jobs that he's had, he loses interest when he loses interest.
Right.
That's it. He switches off and he's out. In which case, get him out and get someone in that's going to take on the mantra and actually drive this club forward, because we have stagnated. At the moment, Marco Silva, with all the wonderful things that he's done for us in the last 5 years, and there's no doubt in it, he's now stuck at the top of the hill and we have stagnated and something needs to change.
Something does need to change, Tony, and that gets to it. Is he willing to change, Tony? That's my big issue with Marco. It really, for me, doesn't have to do with the contract. It has to do with him as a manager. I've said this to you, and I'm a big fan of Marco Silva's, but I've always approached it this way. Has he taken Fulham as far as he can, Tony? If you're telling me Marco will change things, will be willing to self-evaluate what he has done and say, you know what, I need to do things a little bit different, please sign the contract. I'm all in, right? Sign the contract. If you're willing to take responsibility for your part of this along with the players, say, you know what, maybe I need to look at this a little bit differently. I don't feel confident that he's willing to do that. So that's my issue with this whole thing. And I think this contract situation has been this cloud hanging over the club. And I actually think, Tony, that this is affecting the players. And I want to go there right now. So could the players be taking on the characteristics of the Fulham manager right now? What I mean is this situation with him affecting them on the pitch? Now, when I look at a team taking on the personality of a manager, any team I have, you could see it. There's fire in the way they're playing with passion. I didn't see that against Everton. Could they possibly be affected by what's going on with Marco?
It's a very good question. And the answer is possibly. I think actions speak louder than words, Russ. And, your point about can Marco Silva change?
Yes.
His actions show that potentially that's not the case. And, I think that it would be fair to say that Marco Silva definitely has his favourites, and it's quite clear to see who they are. So maybe he's got a little bit too comfortable in, relying on those individuals to perform. And at the moment, they're not. And they're not performing to the level that he needs them to. So in which case, if players aren't performing as a manager, your first thing is, right, I need to change it. And the thing that really, really jumps out at me and says to me that actually Marco Silva's probably got to a point where actually, yes, he may have taken us as far as he can, because we're still zonal marking at corners, Russ.
I know this. You and I talked about this.
We are still zonal marking at corners. And guess what?
And it's hurting them.
Everton scored on Saturday from us marking zonal again from corners. And when is this madness going to stop? When is Marco Silva and his backroom staff, who, by the way, are as much to blame as he is, because, they sit there with their clipboards and all their paper and analysis and all this rubbish, right? It doesn't take a genius to tell you that we can't zonal mark. We're not good enough. The players can't do it. And they've showed that because they've conceded 8 or 9 goals from zonal marking. And the fact that we continue to persist with it just shows that actually something is seriously not right.
Right. And Ben actually agrees with you 100%. And this is my whole thing with Marco. Again, I want a manager that not only is going to inspire his players, get the most out of his players, but is willing to look at a situation and say, maybe this needs to change. Maybe I need to change something. I don't think there's any shame in that, Tony. I actually think it shows growth in not just a person, but a manager or a player. If they say, you know what, I need to work on this. This zonal marking thing is, in my opinion, crap. If it worked, I would be for it, but it's not working, right? So you should be fixing it. Why do you keep doing it? Because it's like you're basically doing the same thing. You're basically banging your head against the wall, and we keep giving up goals. Okay, I'm sick and tired of some of these goals that they're giving up. How can you look at that as a coaching staff and say, you know what? It's not the system, it's the players. Maybe it's the system.
Yeah, look, again, I don't understand. They work from Monday to Friday on the training ground. They are, thrown together, the set pieces, the coaches, they set them up, they talk about it, they tell the players where to stand, what to do, etc., right? And they work on it. They must be working on it 45 minutes to an hour every session, just driving balls in there and doing, what they have to do, which is defend. But as you said, Russ, either the players simply aren't good enough and can't do it, in which case, as you said, you need to change it and go back to man marking. Okay, so every player's got a man, and your responsibility is that individual player. So if they get the run on you, it's your responsibility, right? And just as you say, change it up. But to continue to persist with it just tells me a little bit about Marco Silva's character. Yep. And the fact of the matter is that
see, Steve nailed it here.
Steve Reynolds has hit the nail in the head with that word, arrogance. And it is arrogance because, what Marco Silva is saying there is, I know what I'm doing is absolutely right, and I'm going to stick with it because eventually it will come good and it will pay off. But when will that be, Marco Silva? 35 games into the season when we are second from bottom, and, it's not good enough.
No. Listen, and to be honest with you, like I said, if he's willing to change and wants to be at Fulham for an extended period of time, I'm all for it. But if he's just going to continue to do what he's doing and he cannot get the most out of some of his players, I know he's made other players better, but maybe this is what we're dealing with. Maybe there's a faction going on. Maybe there's a fraction. And I'm going to talk about that because I've heard some things, and I'll share that coming up shortly because I got some other talking points that I heard from this great conversation I had this morning, because it's making me think what's going on and what should the Cons do. Like I said, I was just messaged something interesting that I don't want to share at this moment because, again, I just saw it, but I will just say, in my opinion, Tony, if the contract situation is what I learned today, that's all true. The Cons have to consider plan B. They have to put together a plan B because Marco might want to leave at some point. He might want to leave now. Who knows? I don't know. Or he might just want to stay to the end of the season. I think it's in the best interest of the club for the Cons to make the right decision and have a plan B ready to go. And if they feel that Marco won't sign a new deal, then I think they need to go with their plan B. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a very difficult and challenging situation. If Marco Silva decides to walk and go, then, that begs the question of who is available, what does that look like? Then you're bringing in a whole new, and it's not ideal bringing in a new manager now because the whole philosophy changes. It might be a good thing for certain players, but, it just unsteadies the ship a little bit further unless you're bringing in, a world-class manager that can hit the ground running and suddenly, change everything, immediately. So I think we have to be careful about, what we.
It has to be the right person.
I absolutely. But I think the right person. Marco Silva.
It could be Claudio Ranieri.
Yeah, no, thanks. Marco Silva, for the first time in his Fulham career, is under a bit of pressure, under a lot of pressure. But you know what, Russ? He's brought a lot of it on himself. That's the frustrating thing because actually a lot of this could have been avoided. And if basic layman people like you and I can see it, obviously I've never coached or managed at the level that he has.
Yeah.
I've got a little bit of idea of football, but if we can see certain things, this guy's being paid a hell of a lot of money to do the same job, but he's not seeing it. You kind of think, well, what the hell is going on here? Why is he not seeing it? Does he not want to see it? Is he trying to get the sack? What is going on?
Well, again, I'm going to some of the decisions lately, Tony. I keep going back to the Josh King decision. Who benefits the most from playing it safe? Is it the club or is it Marco Silva? I will say it's Marco Silva because he, again, and I've said this and I'm going to say it one more time. I have reliable sources that have told me that this summer Marco was trying to get the Tottenham job. He interviewed with the Tottenham job. I have a few that told me that. And I actually had someone that told me that he told the Cons this. He wanted to be upfront with them, that he was going to interview with Daniel Levy. Okay? If you're the Cons and you know this, my first thought is, okay, we have to have a plan B ready to go because he might be a flight risk. I mean, we knew that anyways, right? But I think you're to the point where something's got to give because right now it is ugly based on what we're watching. And like I said, some of the stuff I'm hearing is ugly, Tony. That's going to lead, talk about something else I learned during this very interesting conversation I had earlier today. And here's the topic. Could there be a fractured team right now because of Marco Silva's decisions? What I mean is that I brought this up earlier in the show, and I'm using the Scott Parker situation. I'm not saying it's totally the same, but Scott Parker, basically, you were either in or out with Scott Parker. You remember that in the end. Look what he did to Mitrovic. Mitrovic was on the outs. You just brought up a very good situation. What about Smith Rowe? He's out. Okay, for whatever reason, he's out of the Marco Silva circle. So why are certain players in? Why are certain players out? What I mean by that is what I've learned is that there are certain players that are upset that other players automatically get a starting position, Tony. And that maybe that is possibly something that's going on behind the scenes, that there's been a little bit of friction because certain players that aren't being played. It could be money related because other players they spent a lot of money on, but maybe someone else should be playing because of merit. This goes back to our discussion. And again, I'm just going to point, there are certain situations on the pitch where you can make that argument. Why is this player playing? We've already been talking about some of them. That I don't know for sure it's about certain players. I'm just saying this is what I've heard. What do you make of this? Could there be something going on? It's what I'm hearing.
Look, Russ, you could well be right. And I do believe actually there are definitely divisions within the group, 100%. And yeah. I think that certain players like, Harrison Reed has been discarded. Cuenca not getting a run of the green. Emil Smith-Rowe after Saturday, he's going to check out. He will check out.
If you're Emil Smith-Rowe, what are you thinking right now?
Well, he's absolutely, his confidence is shot, right? He's one of those players that I think that needs an arm around him. He needs to be made to feel special, needs to made to be feel that player. In order to get the best out of him, he needs that love. And Marco Silva is not giving him the love in any way, shape or form. And so you've got forget the price tag. Look, at the end of the day, Fulham paid what they paid for him, regardless whether he's worth it or not. He was still Fulham's highest transfer player, when they brought him in. What have I been saying to you, Russell, for the last 2.5 years about us defensively?
You've been saying that it's simply not good enough. Right. There's something wrong, and we're not defensively sound.
Good enough.
That's what you've been saying.
Defensively, bar the goalkeeper, but Leno is, in my opinion, is a world-class goalkeeper. We have got 4 very average. Maybe Tete's at his best. He's maybe a little bit better than average. But our back 4, and I'm including Anthony Robinson in this as well. Yep. They are bang average defenders. Bang average. Remember, Joachim Andersen, bang average. He got relegated with Fulham. Yep. In a Fulham side that should have done a lot better with those players in that squad, right? He is bang average. Calvin Bassey is bang average. And Fulham fans, can think I'm mad, whatever. I'm telling you, I watch these players week in and week out. They are bang average. And that is one of the fundamental issues at the moment that we have got with this team. We cannot keep clean sheets. We don't defend well enough, and we don't give ourselves a platform to go and build on anything because we're giving away sloppy goals all the time. And until we address that back four, right, and until we say, you know what, I'm going to give Cuenca and Diop a run of games at centre half, right? I'm going to give them the opportunity. Until we do something as drastic as that, nothing is going to change, in my opinion.
Well, again, like I said, this goes back to the decisions of the manager. If it's not working, Tony, if they're not giving him what Fulham needs, why does he continually play certain players? You know, I'm making the argument. Why does he continue to do the double pivots, Tony? It doesn't work. It doesn't help them defensively. It sure as hell doesn't help them going forward. Why does he continue to do that? Arrogance. I'm going to go there. Arrogance. Steve Reynolds already said it. Why do you continue to do that? It isn't working. Fix it. And that's what's frustrating to me. He's not fixing it, Tony. And he's alienating other players. That's why I'm talking about this that there could possibly be divisions within the team. We had that under Parker. I hope that I'm wrong, well, the information I am, but I could see this possibly going on because there are certain players that are being alienated out of this team. Smith Rowe is number one on that list.
100%. And Steve Reynolds makes a really valid point there. And that is the reason that Fulham side got into Europe, Russ, is because Roy Hodgson built a solid back four. He had four strong defenders that knew how to defend. Brett Hanlon knew how to defend. He never lost a header. He never lost a tackle. He was always in the right place, read the game very well, and they defended. None of this bombing on nonsense, fullbacks out of position all the time and, you know, all that crap. It was four defenders, nice and solid, job done. And it gave us a platform to build on.
And two strikers up front.
Yeah, listen, it's no coincidence. But you've got to be brave to want to do it. And Marco Silva just cannot distance himself from this, you know, two holding midfield players, which clearly, yeah, it worked to a degree last season, but we've moved on from that. Teams have evolved. And you know what? We have to evolve. And if we don't evolve quickly in the next 10 games, we are going to be bang in trouble.
We are already in trouble, and that hurts me to say this, okay? I'm going to talk about relegation coming up in a couple more topics, 2 more topics, but we're in trouble and it doesn't need to be that way, but that's where they are. That's the reality. Okay. The club is where they are and it's a mess right now. Tony, let's move on to go along with a couple more topics that I have for you. Here's one that I actually, someone during this conversation mentioned this. Did Fulham rush Rodrigo Muniz back too soon? Now, again, during this conversation I had, what I learned was that there was some talk after the match that, again, I'm call it speculation, that potentially Rodrigo Muniz was not happy because he was not ready to come back. So if that's the fact, if they rushed him back, why? Why would they rush him back, Tony, if he wasn't ready? Were they that desperate to get him back? Did they, you know, and again, he's injured again. So if the medical team knew, he was cleared, so you would think that he was ready. That's what I'm not 100% sure about this information. But what do you make of this? Could he have been rushed back? He just got injured again.
Well, do you know what? There's quite a few facets to that. And number one, the answer is yes, they did rush him back because 20 minutes of him being on the pitch, he's back off the pitch. So clearly he wasn't right. But I'm sorry, Russ, if I'm a footballer and I'm not feeling 100% and Rodrigo Muniz is not feeling right, surely he's got to turn around to the backroom staff and say, do you know what, lads? I'm not ready this week. You're going to have to leave me out. I'm not feeling right. And that's it. So do you know what? He's as much to blame as the bloody club, as Silva is for bringing him in and playing him.
Fair point.
And there's another factor is that there's some conjecture at the moment about Raul's fitness, that he's not training.
He's not training. I didn't know that.
What the hell is going on there?
I don't know, man.
There just seems to be so many things, Russell, at the moment that just seem to be, you know, just not right at all at the moment.
Things are leaking out now, and this is what happens when you lose. When you're winning, when you're not in a relegation battle, none of this comes out. It all comes out now. It now comes up.
And in answer to Steve Reynolds' question, how many points are we getting from our next 4 games? Based on the opposition that we're playing, Sunderland, Tottenham, Man City and Crystal Palace, and based on the fact that those 4 teams are in relatively good shape and good form, honestly, Steve, I think we're going to get one point out of our next 4 games. I can't see anything else. I genuinely cannot. However much I want to look at it, without the emotion and look at it objectively, realistically, the way Sunderland are playing, are we going to beat Sunderland? Not a chance.
I don't know if we can beat Sunderland, but I'm not buying Sunderland. I've watched them a few times. I'm not buying them, but I understand what you're saying, because based on what we've done, you're right. You're right.
We'll get the point against Tottenham because I don't think they're particularly great. But Palace and Man City, we're not going to get any change out of those 2 sides.
Not Palace, man. Not Palace. Not Palace.
We are in, and Marco Silva has got a huge job in the next four matches. Huge.
Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. Okay. One final topic before we move on. And this is a big one. Okay. So again, from my conversation with this person that I trust and gets a lot of good information from sources, this is about Fulham cannot afford a relegation, Tony. And I think this will all make sense. So I think the Cons are going to be under a lot of pressure, might be under pressure right now. You want to know why? Because they can't. They can't afford a relegation. Why? The Riverside stand and the pricing in the Riverside stand. They can get away with it right now. This is a conversation we're having because of tourists. You're not going to get the money that they need for the Riverside stand if we're in the championship. This is big. So for me, Tony, I actually believe this to be true. And I think the Cons are really worried. This is just my opinion. I think they're worried because they know that this would be horrific for them if they got relegated. And I think that might be why there was a conversation to try to get this contract situation taken care of with Marco, because they know that this is what I've been saying, a cloud hanging over the club. Fulham can't afford a relegation. I think it would be devastating for the club.
No owners worth their salt can afford a relegation, Russ. And look, whilst the Riverside has been, a great asset to the club and to have it there, and it's changed the landscape of the ground and everything, it's only great if it's full every week and it's buzzing and you've got real supporters in there that, really care about the team. The fact of the matter is it's half empty every week. As you say, you're not getting real fans in there. Relegation to the Championship for Fulham would be catastrophic on so many levels, Russell. I
think this one would be devastating. We've had a few recently. I think this one would be really bad.
And let me tell you, it would be a long time. I believe it would be a long time before you see us back in the Premier League if we were to go down. I really do. I think it would be absolutely catastrophic. So if I'm Tony and Shade Khan now, whilst January is approaching, I'm getting all my ducks in a row and I am hammering that transfer market in January, and I'm doing whatever I need to do to back Marco Silva, to get the players in, to turn this around, right? And do everything in my power to give him the tools that he needs. But Marco Silva has to be open to changing his mindset and work ethic in terms of how he sets his team up. And at the moment, we're heading south.
Yeah,
we're not heading north.
I totally agree, Tony. And one final topic. I said that was the final topic. I got one more that goes along with this. I also learned this. Marco will have limited funds this January. He was told this during this conference call. Again, this is what I've learned. Again, speculation, call what it is. But he will have limited funds. And basically, it probably means he would have to sell 1 or 2 players to basically buy what he would want. And I think that's why you saw all this stuff with Harry Wilson before the end of the transfer window, and possibly Traore might be someone that you would consider too that are on the outs. Those are the two that I think that the club, this is my opinion, would be looking at if they have to sell to buy. But I have a feeling, Tony, that they're going to have to sell to buy based on what I've learned. That's what they told him.
Well, who are we going to sell, Russ? And also, what are we going to get for Adama Traore if we sell him? What realistically we're going to get for him? 5 million quid if we're lucky?
If you're lucky.
If we get a treasure chest of 15 million, that gives you 20 million. What are you going to sell Harrison Reed? What are you going to get for Harrison Reed? 3 million?
Not much, man. Not much.
Right, exactly. If you sell Raul, what are you going to get for him? £1.50 and a bagel. You know, it's, I mean, look, Marco Silva, as manager of this football team, knows what he needs, knows what he has to get. He has to go to Tony Khan and Shahid Khan, knock on their door and say, right, guys, if you want to stay up this season, this is what I need in January, right, to give us a fighting chance. Because I believe going into January, we will be in the bottom 5. That's my prediction. Going into January, we will be in the bottom 5. And there'll be 2 or 3 points in it between the bottom. Well, I think Wolves are gone, but between the next team and that sort of distance. So, you know what it's like, Russell. Games come thick and fast. We have to hit the ground running every single week. And we're going to need the players to do that. And we need to start getting a tune out of Kevin. We need to start getting a tune out of Emil Smith-Rowe. We need to start getting a tune out of Iwobi. We need to start getting a tune out of Harry Wilson. We need our defenders to start defending properly and stop giving away crap goals. We need to start defending well at set pieces and stop giving away crap goals. And if we can adjust all of those things and get them right, then we'll start getting some points on the board.
Yeah. Listen, because of what they've done so far, they put themselves in a really difficult spot, Tony. That's why I know it's easy just to talk about the match, but there's a lot more to talk about than losing to Everton. It's actually the fallout and what's happened before and what happened last season. The big issue I have is that there's one thing that I know, and it's a proven track record. And this is why I think the Cons need to seriously consider moving on from Marco Silva now. And is this: if they're really worried about relegation, the track record of Marco Silva's teams every January for the second half of the season is piss poor. You'll agree with me with that. You know this to be true. So if you're manager that has led you every season wouldn't you be worried if you were them? Wouldn't you have to consider an alternative knowing the history?
Well, I mean, it comes back to that old question, doesn't it, Russ? How serious are Shahid Khan and Tony Khan about this football club?
Well, again,
how serious is Tony Khan about his position of director of football within this football club? How serious does he take his responsibilities? And my answer to that is,
well, you know how I feel about that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where the problem lies, Russell. You've got a director of football that doesn't take it seriously.
I am totally with you. What has driven me crazy is that, listen, I've had Tony and Shahid on my show. It was great to have them both on, but I will criticize them. Tony Khan should not be director of football. Whoever is director of football should be everything that they're focused on. How can you focus on Fulham when you're worried about AEW, the Jacksonville Jaguars? And honestly, I want Fulham to come first. Now, I could make a different argument when it comes to the owner because owners own multiple teams. That's a different story. But when your director of football has other interests that are probably higher than the director of football, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like you said, that's a big part of the problem. I totally agree with you on that. Listen, Tony, I know loves the club. I believe that to be true. This is not about loving the club. It's about what's doing right for the club. Step aside and let someone else be director of football. Bring in a whole new team that can basically bring in the players that is needed. Again, I think what Fulham need to do is change the ways that they build a football team, Tony. And as long as they keep doing the same thing, it's going to leave us where we are. Where's their ambition? My ambition is to get into Europe. Right now, they just want to survive because of what they've done. Because they want us to be mid-table. They're comfortable with that. I'm not. And now we have a threat of relegation. What do you do when you're that? Like I said, I'm all with you. I am frustrated because people think because Tony was on my show and Shahi was on my show that I rubber stamp everything that they say and do. Are you effing kidding me? I'm the one that called for the Cons to sell the club 2 years ago. So don't throw that at me ever again because you're dead ass wrong. I want Tony Khan to basically step aside and have someone else call the shots as director of football. I'm done with that.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And it's that collective group of directors at that level. I know Gary and Chris have made points about it in the comments.
Too. I mean, come on.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
And we said this before. It's prehistoric. Brian Talbot, prehistoric.
It's time to clean house.
Need to be moved on and a clean. And like you said, Russ, I want a director of football that is passionate, not only about the game, but about this football club. I want a director of football that can identify a football player that's going to fit into what the Premier League is, the demands of the Premier League, right? There are hundreds of thousands of footballers around the world, Europe, everywhere, that we could be looking at, that we could be focusing on, that our scouts could be, looking to bring in to strengthen us and to improve us. But nothing seems to be happening. Nothing. And, someone alluded to the fact that, when we sold Mitrovic, and I go back to this, when we sold Mitrovic and Polinia, we never replaced. them. What we did is we stuck a plaster. We stuck a Band-Aid over it. That's all we did. We stuck a Band-Aid. And now that is what's coming back to haunt us because we've got two centre forwards in this team that cannot score goals at this level. Or score the goals that we need to keep us, relatively competitive.
Yeah.
And we've got a midfield now that has basically become so static and boring that Silva won't change it or can't change it because he doesn't know how to change it.
That's why this is a mess right now. That's why we're on this show talking about an effing mess. And what is driving me crazy is that we're caught in the middle of the mess. Me, you, and the Fulham supporters. As I said, I feel like it's a family getting a divorce. Parents are getting divorced. I think eventually that's going to happen between Marco and the Cons, and we're in the middle. We're the kids, and that's what drives me nuts about this, because someone has to take the lead and be honest about where we are and the direction we're going, because this just isn't good enough, Tony. It's just not good enough. In
answer to Gary's question there, how come Brentford can find players and we can't? It's very simple, Gary, because they have got a structure in place of, football people qualified that are doing that job and going out and finding the players that need to be found. They're doing their due diligence, right? They're doing the analysis. They're finding players. They're looking at players. They're structured. I don't see that at Fulham. I don't see it at all. We never get any feedback from our scouts. We never get any feedback about players. Nothing at all. And so it's a massive, massive grey area, and it does need to be addressed because that, as I said, that middle management has become too comfortable, too easy, and that is where the big change needs to happen, Russ. It really does.
Okay, very good. All right. Listen, we've been going for a while. Honestly, I don't feel like I have the stomach to really go through the match. So coming up next to end this show, I just want to go to Tony with our final thoughts on what we've discussed tonight.
Russ, brilliant, really, really great analytical, breakdown of where we're at and the problems that we face. Yep. And I think everyone in this, watching and has commented is on the same page. And the frustrating thing is that, everyone makes great comments and talks real sense, but we're not seeing it from the powers that be. And like I said to you, always, actions speak louder than words. We can all sit here and talk. Marco Silva can sit in his presses and talk, right? But we need to see the actions now because, make no bones about it. The next 4 games, and I know we've mentioned it already
Yep.
in the comments and talked about it tonight. The next 4 games are hugely, hugely important. And although I'm being, pessimistic about 1 point from, 12, hopefully it won't be that, that bad. But
Sure.
I genuinely at the moment can't see how that's going to be any different.
Okay. All right. Very good, Tony. Listen, my final thoughts are this. It's again, I've been doing this show since 2011, and I love talking about Fulham. And I'm not gonna lie, I when I first started doing this show, I was a little nervous about being criticized of not knowing enough, and I think back then maybe I didn't know enough, or I didn't think I knew enough. I know enough now, and I know what I'm seeing, and I can talk Fulham with the best of them. And I'm just telling you right now, I can see a return of what happened at the end of Scott Parker's reign. And if that is happening right now, a fracture within the team, Marco might, again, what's going on with him, someone needs to take the leadership role and make some drastic decisions to basically save this season. Forget about us talking about Europe or any BS about that. It's keeping Fulham in the Premier League. I knew it would happen, Tony. I didn't think it would happen this season. Fulham are in a relegation battle, and they could be the rest of the season. And my final thoughts are this. I knew based on the size of the club that it would happen again, but it's sad that it's happening this season because I thought there was an opportunity for Fulham to build. But it's here. It's in front of us. We're going to deal with it. I hate relegation battles more than anything, but I'm going to accept that Fulham are in a relegation battle. And that's my final thought, Tony.
Yeah, and well said. And now it's a case of, what Fulham really are going to have to roll up their sleeves, Russ, and show their mettle and show if they, what character do we have in this squad, because it's not just about the manager, the coaches, it's about the collective 11 on that football pitch. Whoever Silva puts out there, they have to start performing. And to be honest with you, they didn't on Saturday. Regardless of what Marco Silva did or didn't do,
Yep.
the players didn't perform. And so, they need to take as much responsibility for that as Marco Silva does. And that's the thing, collectively moving forward now, they all know that. And actually, the game against Sunderland at home is really important for so many levels because we can't buy a win away from home. Our away form at the moment is so poor that we really do need to come out of that game, that home game, with something. Because if we don't, then the toxicity around the place and around the fans and it's gonna amp up a few levels, Russ.
Yeah.
And that's when it starts to get uncomfortable. And you don't want to be seeing Marco Silva being torn to pieces. Because...
Kamal, you're late. Kamal, you're late. You're a little late.
Great cameo, though. Russ.
Great cameo. You're gonna have to watch back because I'm telling you, you're gonna want to watch and listen to this show and tell your brother, by the way.
But listen, Russ, no one covers Fulham like you do. No one.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that.
It's absolutely levels above, and you know what? Continue to do what you do. It's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Tony. And listen, like I said, it's not like I want to do a show talking about relegation or talk about all these issues. But honestly, it needs to be talked about because listen, we're just a show, right? But I want people to get it out there, to let the cons know, to let Marco know, to voice their opinions on what's going on with the club. Because, like I said, listen, Jack Kelly does a very good job as a journalist covering the club. Do you know how many journalists cover Arsenal and Liverpool in those clubs? They get round-the-clock coverage. I'm used to that with the New England Patriots. We don't get that. And because of it, the team isn't under as much pressure as they should be unless they're now in the situation that they're in. But they need to be under pressure the entire time, okay? Not just when they're in dire straits. That's what drives me crazy about the media in England is that they only care about Fulham when they're in trouble. Where are you when we're doing something good? Can't find you. And that's what drives me crazy because it's all about the negative. I'm a positive person. I want to be in a positive place. I can't be right now. And I'm going to share what's going on with Fulham Football Club. And right now, it's not good. Things need to change or they're going down. And if they go down this time, it could be, as Tony said, for a very long time. So I would just say to the fans, if you're watching this, voice your opinions. Let your opinions known because the media certainly isn't going to do it. We have to do it. And that's why I'm glad I can voice my opinion. Tony can voice his. Anyways, that's going to do it for this show. He's Tony Gold. I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the Talk Sport Fan Network.